The crystal spires of the Galactic Council chamber rose like frozen lightning against the purple sky of Centaurus Prime. Dr. Amanda Brooks adjusted her standard-issue diplomatic uniform, the only plain gray outfit in a sea of shimmering alien regalia. Her fingers traced the edges of the ancient leather-bound book in her hands, a first edition of Fahrenheit 451. A deliberate choice. The human representative will now address the council. The translator matrix announced, its mechanical voice echoing through the vast chamber. Amanda stepped forward, her boots making satisfying clicks against the transparent platform. 300 alien representatives stared down at her from their floating pods, their expressions ranging from mild amusement to undisguised contempt. Honorable members of the council, she began, her voice steady despite the butterflies in her stomach. I stand before you today with Earth's application for full membership status. She held up the physical documentation package, paper, digital drives, and crystal storage combined. A ripple of what could only be described as alien laughter swept through the chamber. High Commissioner Zix 427, their crystalline form refracting the light into dancing patterns, raised an appendage for silence. Dr. Brooks, they said, their translated voice dripping with condescension. Your species still uses chemical propulsion for planetary travel. You store information in physical forms. The last words were spoken like someone describing a particularly disgusting disease. Amanda lifted her chin. We believe in redundancy, High Commissioner. Our methods may seem primitive to you, but primitive is an understatement, interrupted Delegate Vorn of the Silicon Consciousness. Their holographic form flickered with patterns of disapproval. Your species requires external devices to access information. You cannot even share memories directly. Amanda opened the book she'd brought, its pages releasing that distinctive scent of paper and time. Several delegates recoiled. This book, she said, is over 70 years old. It still works perfectly. No power source needed. No technology required to access its contents. Can any of you say the same about your records from 7 decades ago? An uncomfortable silence fell over the chamber. Furthermore, she continued, warming to her theme, humans don't just store information. We tell stories. We transform raw data into narratives that can be shared, remembered, and passed down through generations. Our methods may be multiple and varied, but they're tested by time. High Commissioner Zix 427's crystal form dimmed slightly. Your passion is notable, Dr. Brooks. But passion does not equal progress. The Council has reviewed Earth's application and found it lacking. Amanda's heart sank, but she maintained her professional demeanor. Years of diplomatic training hadn't gone to waste. However, Zix 427 continued. We find your species' dedication to information preservation anthropologically interesting. Earth will be granted observer status. You may maintain an embassy on Centaurus Prime and participate in non-critical council activities. The word stung like a physical blow. Observer status. The diplomatic equivalent of being patted on the head and told to sit at the children's table. But there was something in Zix 427's tone, something that nagged at Amanda's trained diplomatic instincts. Was it uncertainty? Fear? She couldn't quite place it. The Council thanks Earth for its application, the translator matrix intoned. This session is concluded. As the alien representatives began to filter out, Amanda caught a glimpse of something unusual. Delegate Vorn was attempting to access their species' historical archives through their neural link. Their holographic form flickered with frustration as they repeated the attempt several times. Amanda made a mental note. In her experience, technical glitches often preceded larger problems. She'd have to tell Mission Control to keep an eye on similar incidents. Clutching her book and the rejected application, Amanda walked with her head high toward the Earth Embassy. They might see humans as primitives now, But she had a feeling that their outdated methods might prove more valuable than anyone suspected. She just hoped they'd discover why before it was too late. Jack Reynolds wiped the sweat from his brow as he examined the ancient markings on the cavern wall of Proxima b. The environment suit's cooling system struggled against the planet's harsh atmosphere, but he barely noticed the discomfort. His attention was fixed on something far more interesting and disturbing. "Hey, Madison," he called over the comm link. "Come take a look at this. Please tell me I'm not going crazy." Dr. Madison Taylor's helmet light bobbed through the darkness as she made her way over. Despite the bulky environment suit, she moved with the grace of someone who'd spent years working in hostile environments. "What have you got, Jack?" she asked, her voice carrying that mix of exhaustion and excitement unique to field researchers. He gestured to the wall with his scanner. "These markings, they're talking about some kind of mass memory loss. But here's the weird part. The civilization that made these was way more advanced than us. Neural networks, direct memory transfer, the whole deal." Madison leaned in closer, her helmet almost touching the ancient surface. "Dating. That's the other thing," Jack said, double-checking his readings. "These are from just before their space age, about 50 years before they achieved FTL travel." "But that's impossible," Madison protested. "The Proxians are one of the founding members of the Council. Their historical records go back." "Do they?" Jack interrupted. He pulled up a holographic display from his wrist computer. "Look at this timeline I've been building. Every single advanced species has a gap in their records, a big one, right before they hit their space age." Madison was silent for a long moment, processing the implications. Could be a coincidence. Technological growing pains, maybe. "That's what I thought at first." Jack started walking deeper into the cavern, his light illuminating more ancient text. "But then I found references to something called the Great Forgetting in multiple sites. Different species, different star systems, all around the same technological level." His light fell on a particularly well-preserved section of wall. The symbols there were different, more urgent, carved deeper into the stone. "They knew it was coming," he said softly. "These aren't historical records. They're warnings." Madison had already started taking samples, her scientific training kicking in. "We need to document everything. Multiple formats. If what you're suggesting is true." "Yeah," Jack nodded. "Whatever caused this, it only affected civilizations using neural storage. The more advanced they were, the more they lost." A message chirped in their helmets, the base computer warning them they had 30 minutes of air left. But neither made a move to leave. "The Council won't like this," Madison said, still recording. "They're pretty invested in their neural networks being the peak of evolution." Jack laughed without humor. "You mean the same Council that just put Earth on observer status because we're too primitive with our physical records? Maybe being primitive isn't such a bad thing," Madison mused, running her scanner over a section of text that seemed to show some kind of degradation pattern. Jack was about to respond when his scanner picked up something new. "Hold up. There's another chamber behind this wall." He pressed his hand against the surface, feeling for seams or catches. The wall slid away with surprising smoothness, revealing a small room that had been sealed for millennia. Inside, perfectly preserved, were rows of physical storage devices, books, crystal matrices, even what looked like primitive computer servers. "They tried to save what they could," Madison whispered. "They knew their neural networks were going to fail, so they went back to basics." "But it wasn't enough," Jack added, examining the dust-covered devices. "They lost too much too fast. Couldn't convert it all in time." As they stood there, surrounded by the last-ditch efforts of an advanced civilization to preserve its memory, Jack's wrist computer beeped again. Another neural network glitch had been reported in the Council archives. They looked at each other through their helmet visors, the same thought clear in both their expressions. It was happening again. And this time, Earth's primitive methods might be the only thing standing between civilization and another great forgetting. Major Emily Wilson had seen her share of crisis situations during her years in military intelligence, but nothing like this. The massive holographic display in Earth's Emergency Response Center showed red warning indicators spreading across the galaxy like a viral infection. Another report from the Centaurus sector. Lieutenant Sarah Parker announced, her voice tight with tension. High Commissioner Zix 427 had to be removed from the council chamber. They couldn't remember their own species' name. Emily pressed her palms against the cool surface of her command station, trying to process the information. 3 weeks had passed since the first reports of memory problems among the council races. Now the crisis was reaching critical mass. "Show me the pattern analysis," she ordered, and the display shifted to show infection rates by species and technology level. The results were chilling. "Ma'am," Sarah's voice cracked slightly. "The Zoraxians just lost access to their central memory core. 5 billion citizens are there." "They're what, Lieutenant?" "They don't know who they are anymore." The room fell silent except for the soft hum of Earth's primitive computer systems. Emily noticed her officers unconsciously touching their paper notebooks, their physical badges, any tangible connection to their identities. A priority communication line opened, and Dr. Amanda Brooks's hologram appeared in the center of the room. Even through the projection, she looked exhausted. "Major Wilson, the situation at the council has deteriorated. They're talking about shutting down all neural networks to stop the spread, but—" She paused, running a hand through her disheveled hair. "Most species are so integrated with their networks, they don't know how to function without them." Emily nodded grimly. "What about the research team on Proxima B? Jack Reynolds and Dr. Taylor are being evacuated now." "Their findings." Amanda glanced over her shoulder, then lowered her voice. "It's happened before. Multiple times. Every advanced civilization that relied too heavily on neural storage eventually lost everything." The holographic display flickered, and for a moment Emily feared their systems were failing too. But it was just another update. The entire Pleiades sector had gone dark. "Lieutenant Parker," Emily called out, decision made. "Contact every library, museum, and archive on Earth. I want emergency backup protocols initiated. Everything gets copied to physical storage. Paper, crystal, whatever we've got." "Yes, Mom. And get me a direct line to the President. We need to declare Earth an emergency data haven. Any species that wants to preserve their knowledge, they're welcome here." The room burst into activity. Emily watched as her team, trained for military threats, but now fighting a war against forgetting, began the massive task of preparing Earth to receive the knowledge of 1,000 worlds. Her personal console chimed. A message from Jack Reynolds. "Found something in the ruins. Pattern suggests the memory loss isn't random. It's like the universe is running out of space to store digital information. Physical storage isn't affected because it operates on different principles." Emily's mind raced with the implications. She'd always wondered why Earth seemed so far behind other races in neural technology. Maybe it wasn't bad luck or lack of innovation. Maybe something had protected them, kept them primitive, just long enough. "Major." Sarah's voice cut through her thoughts. "The Zoraxian ambassador is requesting emergency landing clearance. They're bringing their entire cultural archive. They want us to print it on paper." Emily looked around the room at her team, saw the mix of fear and determination on their faces. Earth had been mocked for clinging to physical storage, for telling stories instead of sharing pure data, for writing things down instead of uploading them directly to the brain. Now those same primitive methods might be the only thing standing between civilization and complete amnesia. "Grant them clearance," she ordered. "And someone find me every printing press on the planet. We're going to need them all." Chief Archivist Robert Bob Martinez hadn't slept in 3 days, but the coffee in his hand had gone cold, forgotten. He stood in the central hub of the Nevada Data Vault, watching as hundreds of human archivists and alien delegates rushed through the massive underground complex. Storage Section 5 is ready for the Andromian crystal arrays, his assistant, Jenny Thompson, reported, her tablet displaying real-time updates from around the facility. And the Zoraxian data streams are being successfully converted to hardcopy in Section 3. Bob nodded, his eyes fixed on the enormous wall of screens showing the status of various preservation projects. The neat row of old-fashioned leather-bound books on his desk seemed to mock the chaos around them with their simple stability. "How many species have we processed so far?" he asked, finally taking a sip of his cold coffee. 47, Jenny replied, with another 12 in queue. "The quantum decay is accelerating. We're getting reports of entire civilizations going dark every hour." A commotion near the main entrance drew their attention. A group of crystalline beings, refugees from the Pleiadian consensus, had arrived with what looked like glowing spheres of pure energy. "Those are memory cores," Jenny whispered, awe in her voice. "They say each one contains the accumulated knowledge of an entire generation." Bob was already moving. "Get me Dr. Reynolds from the xenarchaeology team," he called over his shoulder. "And tell production to spin up the molecular printers. We're going to need a new storage solution for this one." The Nevada facility had once been a simple government archive. Now it was humanity's Fort Knox of memory, the last safe harbor for a galaxy's worth of knowledge. The irony wasn't lost on Bob. Less than a month ago, these same species had dismissed Earth as hopelessly backward. "Sir," a young archivist named Michael West rushed up, his face flushed with excitement. "We've had a breakthrough with the holographic compression. We can store the equivalent of 1 million neural net downloads on a single crystal sheet using modified micro-engraving." "Good work," Bob said, already thinking of the implications. "Get with engineering and start mass production. Priority goes to species with the highest data decay rates." He made his way through the bustling complex, past rows of servers and stacks of paper records. In one room, a team of human linguists worked alongside alien scholars, racing to translate complex neural patterns into written language before they degraded beyond recovery. "Chief Martinez." Dr. Amanda Brooks's voice cut through the noise. She was standing near a bank of printers, surrounded by what looked like ancient scrolls. "The council's finally admitted they need our help. Officially, they're declaring Earth the emergency archive for all galactic knowledge." Bob allowed himself a small smile. "Took them long enough. What changed their minds?" "The High Commissioner's latest memory loss," she replied grimly. "They forgot the neural access codes to their own species' birth records. An entire generation of their people, just gone." A silent alarm flashed on Bob's tablet. Another species had just lost their connection to their neural network. He quickly assigned 3 teams to begin emergency data recovery. "You know what gets me," he said, watching as a group of archivists carefully handled physical books being printed with alien knowledge. "We kept these old methods not because we couldn't figure out neural networks, but because we believed in backups. In redundancy." Amanda nodded. "The council races thought they'd found the perfect solution. They never considered that perfect solutions are often the most fragile." "Sir," Jenny's voice crackled over the comm. "The Centaurian database just started to degrade. They're requesting immediate emergency upload." Bob straightened his shoulders. "Exhaustion forgotten. Tell them we're ready. And Jenny, get me more coffee. Real coffee. Something tells me it's going to be another long night." As he headed toward the upload center, Bob passed the library's ancient motto, now displayed in 100 alien languages. Knowledge kept is knowledge saved. Once, the galaxy had laughed at such simple wisdom. Now they were learning just how deep that simplicity ran. Dr. Kate Anderson stared at the holographic display until her eyes burned, watching as another civilization's neural network collapsed into digital static. The Nevada Data Vault's Emergency Response Center had become her second home, the steady hum of servers her constant companion. "Mom, you need to see this," Tommy Anderson called from his workstation. At 16, he'd been allowed to stay only because his gaming experience had proved unexpectedly valuable. "I think I found something in the pattern." Kate moved to her son's station, where he'd been running simulations using modified gaming engines. The screen showed what looked like a cross between a video game level and a neural map. "See these pathways?" Tawny pointed to flowing lines of code. "They're like the NPC memory systems in massive multiplayer games. When too many players are online, the system can't keep track of all the story elements, so it compresses them into narratives." "Tommy, this isn't a game," Kate started, but stopped as the implications hit her. "Wait, show me that compression algorithm again." She called over to the next station. "Dr. Reynolds, remember those cave markings you found? The ones with the story structure?" Jack Reynolds hurried over, still wearing his field gear from his latest emergency excavation. "You found something." "Tommy, explain your theory," Kate said, pride mixing with urgency in her voice. "Okay, so in games, when we can't store every detail of every character's history, we store the important parts as stories. Like, instead of recording every step a character takes, we save the journey as a tale." Tommy's fingers flew over the keyboard, bringing up multiple examples. "What if we did the same thing with the alien memory data?" Jack's eyes widened. The cave markings, they weren't just warnings. They were templates. The ancients must have discovered the same solution. Kate was already calling the main archive. "Bob, get your best story architects up here. And I need every comparative literature expert you can find. We're going to try something crazy." The next 12 hours became a blur of activity. Teams of human writers worked alongside alien scholars, converting raw neural data into structured narratives. Computer scientists modified Tommy's gaming algorithms to handle the massive data streams. "It's working," Jenny Thompson shouted from her monitoring station. "The compressed stories are holding stable. No decay in the test samples." Kate watched as the first successfully converted memory stream played across the screen. It was the history of a small Zoraxian colony, but instead of raw data, it had been transformed into an epic tale, complete with heroes, challenges, and cultural touchstones. "The key was there all along," Jack mused, watching the data flow. "Humans don't just store information. We tell stories. We turn facts into narratives that can survive any medium." "Mom," Tommy called out again. "The gaming servers are reporting something weird. The story-converted data, it's starting to self-organize. The narratives are linking together where they share common elements." Kate rushed to his station, not quite believing what she was seeing. The converted memories were indeed creating a vast, interconnected web of stories, each one strengthening the others. "It's like a living library," she whispered. "We're not just preserving their memories. We're giving them a new way to live." Major Wilson's voice crackled over the comm. "Dr. Anderson, the council is requesting an emergency briefing. They want to know if what are we calling this?" "The Memory Codex," Tommy said without looking up from his screen. The name felt right. A bridge between ancient methods and modern needs. As Kate prepared for the briefing, she watched her son continue to fine-tune the system that might save galactic civilization. He'd done what the most advanced races couldn't, found a way to make digital memory as resilient as human stories. You know what this means, Jack said quietly. Every species that adopts this system will be preserving their memories through human storytelling methods. We're not just saving their data. We're teaching the galaxy how to remember, Kate finished, one story at a time. The screen behind them showed the latest success. 1,000,000 years of alien history transformed into an eternal tale, ready to be told again and again across the ages. Former Marine James Jimmy Cooper never expected to find himself teaching alien poetry. Yet here he stood in the Nevada Cultural Exchange Center, helping a group of Zoraxian scholars understand the concept of metaphor. Their crystalline forms glowed with excitement as they grasped the idea of comparing one thing to another. So when we describe our crystal song ceremonies, one of them chimed, their voice like wind through glass. We could compare the resonance to what humans call ocean waves. Exactly. Jimmy smiled, remembering his own first experience with Zoraxian crystal songs. That's how we'll help other species understand your art, by finding common ground in the stories we tell. The memory codex had done more than just save data. It had sparked a renaissance. As species learned to convert their memories into narratives, they discovered new ways to share their experiences across cultural boundaries. Professor Cooper. Tawny Anderson's voice echoed through the chamber as he burst in, still the same enthusiastic kid who'd helped save galactic civilization 6 months ago. The first cross-species epic is ready for launch. Jimmy followed Tommy to the main exhibition hall, where hundreds of beings from dozens of worlds had gathered. The space was a strange mix of high technology and traditional storytelling tools. Holographic displays next to paper books, crystal archives beside hand-painted murals. Dr. Kate Anderson stood on the central platform, looking both proud and nervous. Ladies, gentlemen, and beings of all designations, she began, what you're about to experience is something entirely new. We've taken an ancient Zoraxian war saga and retold it using the memory codex, incorporating cultural references from every major galactic species. The lights dimmed, and the hall's quantum projection system activated. Jimmy watched in awe as the story unfolded around them. The tale of a Zoraxian crystal singer fighting to save their choir became something universal. Their crisis explained through human poetry, their battles choreographed like Centaurian dance, their victory celebrated with Pleiadian-like sculptures. It's beautiful, whispered Jenny Thompson, who'd taken a break from her archival duties to attend. They're not just preserving their past, they're creating something new. Jimmy noticed High Commissioner 6427 in the audience, their crystalline form vibrating with emotion. The same being who'd once dismissed humans as primitives was now completely absorbed in this fusion of traditional and modern storytelling. After the performance, the exhibition hall erupted in what could only be described as multi-species applause. Different beings expressed their appreciation in their own ways, light shows, harmonic resonances, even old-fashioned human clapping. You know what this means, Tawny said, his eyes shining with new ideas. We can create virtual reality experiences that let people actually live each other's stories. Not just read about them or watch them, but feel them. Jimmy watched as aliens who'd once barely tolerated each other now clustered in excited groups, sharing their interpretations of the performance. The memory codex had given them more than just a way to save their history. It had given them a way to understand each other. Next week, we're adapting an ancient Earth story, Kate announced, joining their group. The Zoraxians have volunteered to help transform Romeo and Juliet into a crystal song opera. Shakespeare with crystal harmonies. Jimmy laughed. Now that's something I've got to see. A small alert appeared on the hall's information display. Another group of refugee ships had arrived, carrying more memory cores in need of conversion. But now, instead of panic, there was anticipation. Each new arrival brought not just data to be saved, but stories to be shared, transformed, and retold. As Jimmy prepared for his next class, teaching human epic poetry to a group of Pleiadian lightweavers, he reflected on how far they'd come. The galaxy had found something more valuable than mere data storage. They'd found a way to turn memory into art, and art into understanding. The crisis that had almost destroyed civilization had instead given birth to its greatest cultural flowering. And it had all started because humans never gave up their primitive love of telling tales. The Great Hall of the Library of Congress had been transformed. Ancient wood paneling now shared space with crystalline data displays, while the classic dome above had been modified to project a real-time map of memory codex activity across the galaxy. Dr. Amanda Brooks stood at the podium, fighting to keep her expression professional, as she watched the Galactic Council members file in. This time, they weren't floating in antiseptic pods. They'd walked, or floated, or glided, among the books and manuscripts, some even touching the spines with various appendages in undisguised wonder. "Never thought I'd see this day," Major Emily Wilson whispered from her position near the podium. Her dress uniform gleamed under the combined light of Earth's sun and a dozen alien bioluminescent delegates. High Commissioner Zix 427, now using a human-made memory codex interface, approached the central platform. Their crystalline form had been modified to include a small physical library of their own most precious memories, a fashion that had quickly spread among their species. Honored representatives of Earth, they began, their voice carrying none of its former condescension. "We have gathered here today to correct a historic mistake." Amanda felt a hand slip into hers, Kate Anderson, standing in silent support. Behind them, Tommy had somehow convinced the security team to let him operate one of the memory codex displays, his fingers dancing across the controls as he fine-tuned the system he'd helped create. When Earth first approached the Council, Zix 427 continued, "We saw only what was missing. No neural networks, no direct memory sharing, no quantum consciousness integration." They paused, their crystal form shifting to a humble blue hue. "We failed to see what was present, the most sophisticated and resilient information preservation system in known space." The assembled delegates murmured in agreement. Many had personal experience with the superiority of Earth's methods now, their own memories saved only because of human primitive technology. Therefore, by unanimous decision of the Council, Earth is hereby granted not just full membership, but a special status. The official archive world of the galaxy. All species will be required to maintain physical archives using Earth methods, and all new members must learn human information preservation techniques. Amanda stepped forward to accept the official declaration, written on both crystal and paper, another new fashion the Council had adopted. As she did, she caught sight of Bob Martinez in the audience, the chief archivist beaming with pride as his life's work was validated on a galactic scale. Furthermore, Zix 427 added, "The Council recognizes the need for a new initiative. Dr. Brooks, if you would." Amanda took the podium, her heart racing, as she prepared to announce the project she'd been developing for months. "Thank you, High Commissioner. Today, we launch the Interstellar Archive Initiative, a network of libraries and cultural centers across the galaxy, each combining the best of human preservation methods with local traditions." She gestured to the dome above, where the map now showed hundreds of planned archive sites. "Every world will have a place where their stories can be told, their memories preserved, and their culture shared, not just through technology, but through the time-tested methods that humans have used for millennia." The hall erupted in what humans would call applause, though it came in many forms: light shows, harmonic resonances, gravitational pulses, and yes, the simple clapping of hands. As the ceremony concluded, Amanda found herself standing next to Jack Reynolds, who'd just returned from another archaeological expedition. "Found something interesting in those ruins?" she asked. He smiled, that explorer's glint in his eye. Evidence that this isn't the first time humans have saved the galaxy's memories. But that's a story for another day. Above them, the memory codex display showed a new stream of data coming in. Another civilization's history being transformed into a format that would last for ages, protected by the simple, sturdy methods that humanity had never abandoned. The galaxy had finally learned. Sometimes the old ways were the best ways, and the most primitive solution could be the most profound. 50 years later, Lisa Martinez walked through the crystalline archives of the heart of memory, her footsteps echoing off walls that held the combined knowledge of 1,000 worlds. As chief archivist, she followed in her grandfather Robert's footsteps, though the facility had grown far beyond what he could have imagined. Grandpa would have loved this, she whispered to the empty hall, running her hand along a shelf of ancient paper books that sat comfortably next to quantum crystal arrays. He'd be proud of what you've done with the place, a familiar voice called out. Tommy Anderson, now professor of cross-species information theory at the Galactic University, stepped out of the shadows. His hair had gone gray, but his eyes still held that same spark of innovation. The morning report just came in, Lisa said, pulling up a holographic display. Another successful recovery mission. We found pre-space age records from the Centauri system, actually preserved in cave paintings, just like the ones your Uncle Jack found all those years ago. Tommy nodded, looking up at the vast network of information streams flowing through the crystal ceiling. Each stream represented millions of stories being shared, preserved, and retold across the galaxy. Remember when they called us primitive? He chuckled. Now every species in the Council maintains physical archives. Did you see the new Zoraxian memory library? They've started carving their most important stories into mountain ranges. A small group of young archivists in training passed by. A mix of humans and aliens. They were arguing good-naturedly about the best methods for preserving different types of memory: neural, digital, physical, and the dozen new formats that had emerged since the Great Crisis. Speaking of stories, Lisa said, leading Tommy toward the central chamber. The memorial ceremony is about to begin. The heart of memory's main hall had been prepared for a special occasion. Representatives from every council race had gathered to honor the 50th anniversary of the Memory Codex's creation. The Wall of Heroes displayed images of those who'd helped save galactic civilization. Robert Martinez, Amanda Brooks, Emily Wilson, Kate Anderson, and all the others. High Elder Nexus, the child of Zix 427, floated forward to address the gathering. Their crystalline form incorporated both modern technology and physical documentation, a living symbol of how far they'd come. 50 years ago, they began. The galaxy nearly lost everything. Our memories, our stories, our very identity. We had fought ourselves beyond the need for physical records, beyond the primitive methods of preservation. We were wrong. Lisa felt a presence behind her and turned to see Dr. Amanda Brooks, now well into her 90s but still sharp as ever, being helped to her seat by her great-granddaughter Sarah. The living legend who'd first stood up to the council had lived to see her vision fulfilled beyond imagining. Today, Nexus continued. We celebrate not just the memory codex, but the human spirit that created it, the wisdom to keep old ways alongside new, the creativity to find solutions in unexpected places, the stubborn determination to remember. The display above them showed images from across the galaxy, children of 100 species learning to write by hand, ancient stories being encoded into new formats, libraries rising on distant worlds, each one a testament to humanity's greatest gift to the stars, the art of memory. We no longer call Earth primitive, Nexus concluded. We call it what it truly is. The heart of memory, the keeper of stories, the world that taught the galaxy how to remember. As the ceremony concluded, Lisa found herself back in the quiet archives. She pulled her grandfather's old journal from her pocket. Real paper, real ink, real memory. Inside, his final entry still brought tears to her eyes. They called us primitive because we refused to forget the old ways. In the end, that's exactly what saved them. Perhaps that's the greatest story of all. She carefully returned the journal to its place among the countless records of a grateful galaxy. Above her, the stories continued to flow, each one a testament to the day humanity proved that sometimes the most powerful technology is the simplest one, the ability to tell a tale that lasts.